Hey there, business builders. Have you ever wondered why some businesses thrive and others struggle despite great marketing? Well, today we're exploring an area of marketing often overlooked, the internal market. We discuss how marketing to your employees can help you grow your business.
Welcome to the Business Builders Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Tomlian.
And I'm Brenton Gowland.
And Brenton, you've been away, haven't you? You've been to the Flinders Ranges. Tell me more.
I have. I've been to the Flinders Ranges, as we discussed in the last episode, and I got saturated. Absolutely and utterly saturated.
There's plenty of that going around.
But I got to tell you, it was so worth it. I was really blown away. We ended up going to Melrose, which is at the base of the Flinders Ranges, and we hiked Mount Remarkable. That was great. But on the second day, we went to this place which was almost like right out of Jurassic Park. It's
Alligator Gorge.
How did you know that?
Oh, I've been there.
It is something, I was shocked. Like, we just go down this big old path into the middle of this, I'd say it was like a rainforest. That's what it felt like, into this gorge. And then you just walk down these steps and you step out into these red cliffs everywhere around you and these little narrow tunnels. One part of it looked like that Lord of the Rings scene in, I think it was the third one, The Return of the King, where he walks into that hill of ghosts. It was so spooky and so cool. I was mesmerized. I thought it was amazing.
Wonderful part of the world.
Yeah, I'm hanging out to go back. I only centered around Melrose, so didn't go much further than that. And I was blown away with how many amazing things there are to look at and see and do. So
some beautiful scenery and there's so much to do in the Flinders. It's not funny.
You know, and I got to say it's a good time of year because we came back and we went straight to Cabaret Festival.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the Cabaret. It's my favorite festival of the year.
I know. They had this guy back, Mark Nadler from New York, I think, originally from Iowa, and he hasn't been here for 9 years. And I originally went to the Cabaret Festival and he was the first artist that I saw there. And he stayed on for a couple of years, but then he hasn't been back for 9 years. And so I thought, I got to go and see him. And it was, again, blown away. And it just surprises me that more people don't go to it. I'd love to see a younger set really embracing that Cabaret Festival. For those of you who are listening internationally, now I've been told, I can't verify this because I only know what people have said. Apparently it's the biggest cabaret festival in the world. Mark Nadler, when he was doing his show, was saying that cabaret artists all around the world, they just want to come to this festival and give up 2 weeks to spend time here in our lousy weather and being at that great festival.
Well, it's lousy weather, but great venue and there's always something going on and great food. They had the Soho Supper Club.
Yes.
Did you get along to that?
No, I walked past it though.
Oh, fantastic.
We also went to see Reuben Kane, and I got to tell you, that man is incredibly talented. That was an incredible show. So some great stuff going on there. And I think it ends this weekend coming. So I think it's Saturday or Sunday is the last days of it. So
That's
I think this podcast comes out this Saturday. So if you hear it really early, then you've got one day to go. And if you're listening internationally, I know I've been rambling on for a little while about this, but we're in a great place in the world. So if you ever want to come to visit somewhere really interesting, put South Australia on your map. But anyway, Ron, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the forgotten market.
The forgotten market.
Yeah. And most people...
What have we forgotten, Ron?
Well, we have forgotten the internal market.
So you're talking about staff.
Yeah, it's something that people, when they think about marketing, they don't think about. And that's the importance of the people within your organization, both in terms of their capacity to be more effective in terms of your marketing out to the customers, but also that you need to spend time, resources, and effort thinking about how they are thinking about your organization. So that there is an internal market neglected at your peril.
Well, it's interesting that you call it, or that we call it, the forgotten market. And just explain to me why you think it's the forgotten market. I'll give you my take on it in a minute, but it's a very interesting title.
Because I've seen too often that it gets forgotten in marketing efforts, that it gets neglected, and then people wonder why their marketing efforts to their target audiences don't tend to work. And when they start doing some analysis, it turns out that the people who have white-handed the marketing efforts are people inside the organization who haven't been told what's going on. I've got some great stories.
I know. I remember some.
Yeah. About organizations I've had things to do with that have neglected their internal market in their external marketing efforts at their expense.
And I think, look, that title, The Forgotten Market, I think it's not necessarily just forgotten, but I think some businesses don't realize that that is actually a market. And a lot of businesses will carry out internal marketing, not knowing they're actually doing internal marketing because they haven't specifically thought or planned for what they're going to communicate necessarily, but they're just doing business as usual. So I think it's an apt title saying The Forgotten Market. And I think it's a good topic to explore. So let's get stuck in.
So what is it? What is internal marketing? Well, nice little definition I dragged up here is it refers to the strategic activities and processes implemented within an organization to effectively communicate and engage with employees, fostering a strong internal culture and aligning them with the organization's mission, value, and vision. So these are things you do to get your employees to adopt the right behaviors, because we're talking here about service organizations in particular, but really all organizations, the internal employees, you want them to behave in a certain way.
Exactly.
Right? And really that's what marketing to a large extent is all about externally as well. You'd like people to modify their behavior so they look at you, they buy your products and services. It's no different from internal employees. You want them to engage in certain behaviors. So it's about how you can influence them to adopt certain behaviors and attitudes.
Some people might argue that's just HR.
Look, don't get me wrong. I think HR and internal marketing go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's about being deliberate, about thinking about the communication in particular and the activities that you undertake in order to get people aligned with, engaged with the organization. And those type of terms are exactly what HR professionals will talk about as well.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting how all the things line up and work together. And I think if we're going further into that definition of what is internal marketing or what is marketing to our staff and so forth, you've got to look at what marketing is as a whole. And marketing is an exercise where we're looking to communicate and get people to carry out a certain action. So we want them to engage with us or we want to affect community change. So marketing is kind of how we go about doing that, right? So if you turn that around to exactly what you're saying, it's about how do we get our employees, how do we get it's how do we get our business to align with our actual strategy, I would say.
And strategy is an incredibly important thing. What you're going to do in terms of internal marketing will be significantly influenced by what you're trying to achieve in terms of a strategy for the organization. So
in simplification, would it be right to say that internal marketing is simply our communication strategy for our staff? Or is it further than that?
I think it goes further than just communication, but needless to say, communication is an important element, a critical element in this. But it goes to understanding. It goes to engagement. It goes to influence and behaviors, like I said before. So why is it important?
Good question.
Yeah. I think it's important, from my perspective, it's important as much as anything because it's about ensuring that the people who are serving your customers are in the best position to serve them effectively.
Yeah.
So that their attitude's right, capabilities are right, they have the right resources. There was this comes down to, I don't know if you've ever come across the concept of the service profit chain.
Well, only in our discussions, to be honest.
Back in the 90s, a Harvard professor, Hesketh, wrote a HBR article called The Service Profit Chain.
And let's just say HBR is Harvard Business Review.
I've fallen into my own trap.
Oh, I love this. We had a discussion at the start of the episode and we said, Ron's going to swap roles with me and do the, keeping the structure of the podcast going. And he always gets stuck into me about acronyms. Yeah. But here you are using acronyms. Yeah. I love it. Harvard Business Review. Keep going. So Hesketh.
Yes. And he talked about the idea that there's this circular process and it starts with hiring the right employees.
Yes.
And then supporting those employees with the right processes and the right resources so that they are satisfied in doing their job and they enjoy the environment they're working in. If you get that condition, then they are much more likely to provide good service to your customers.
So you can almost sum it up and say happy employees equals the business gets taken care of.
Yeah. And happy employees equals happy customers. Happy customers equals return business. Return business equals profit. Profit is taken back into, at least some of it, taken back into providing great resources and the right sort of recruiting and the right sort of processes. And so the chain goes. Yep. That's why it's called the service profit chain.
Yep.
So providing service starts with making your employees happy and satisfied with the work that they do so that they can serve the customers more effectively.
And so if we then talk about why is internal marketing important, because that forms one of the tools that helps that service chain stay in motion. Yeah.
And it's critical for your external marketing efforts as well, not only because of happy, satisfied customers, but because internal employees are often your brand advocates or should be your brand advocates, but they can just as easily be your brand detractors.
That's right.
I think I've told you the story about I was working for a large energy organization and we were launching a new product and we were new into this marketing business development area. And so everything had to be secret squirrel, sort of commercial in confidence. And we launched this product without telling anyone internally because we were worried that they might leak the information to the competition.
Competitors, yeah.
And it flopped.
Yep.
Badly.
Yep.
So we went out and did some research and we asked our customers who were supposed to be buying this but didn't. So who told you not to buy it? And we talked about builders. We talked about plumbers. We talked about all sorts of different influencers on the customer's decision. All of them were great advocates because we'd covered that off. All our external influencers, we'd actually had significant influence on. When it came down to it, this organization had about 6,000 employees at the time. And invariably, the customer said, oh, I knew Fred, who knew John, who worked within your organization. And I asked him about this new product.
Yes.
And what do you think John said?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes. So it turned out that the customers were influenced by not someone that they knew, but someone that they knew within the organization.
Yep.
And when they were asked, okay, what did these guys say? What did the internal employees say? They said, that's just something dreamed up by the marketing guys.
Yep.
I don't know anything about it, and it's probably a load of BS.
Yep.
So we then went, without any further budget, we then went and did an internal marketing campaign for the next year. We didn't spend any more money. And what do you think happened?
I think it probably was a success.
We couldn't keep up with demand. Why? Because now the internal sources of information, our internal people were brand advocates.
Yeah.
They were advocate. They had information that they were given that gave them the power to say, yes, this is a fantastic idea. You should be adopting it. We did the internal marketing and that made all the difference.
Yep. And look, that is the obvious version of internal marketing. And so as you know, I've been running advertising agencies for years and working in that space. And I have run national roadshows where we've done brand launches or we've done campaign launches where we've literally, with one company, I think they had several hundred staff all around Australia. We went to each state and we advised them what was going to happen. We gave them telephone scripts for when people rang up and asked questions about the rebrand, all that kind of jazz. And it went so smoothly. That kind of what you're talking about, lining up the staff to basically be the ambassadors for the brand. But I don't even think in this particular case I would define it as ambassadors. I would say that is a great example of unified marketing strategy because you've got to ask, how does the internal marketing line up with the external marketing? And the answer really comes down to really having a strategy that sits above everything, that you have your internal marketing and your external marketing pointing towards or lining the staff up to deliver.
It's that same analogy that we used very early on when we started talking about marketing, which is having a laser focus.
Yes.
And lasers are all about aligning everything, aligning the light photons
Yes.
up in the same direction. And
Yep.
this is internal marketing, external marketing have to line up, which means you have to put some effort into it. So
Yep.
when I hear from an employee about a particular product or a particular service, it matches perfectly what I've heard in the advertising or the social media, so that there's coherence.
Yeah. I used to have this thing that I used to say to customers all the time, or our clients, is that if we go out with an advertising campaign to the market and it's brilliant and we say how great we are, basically, and you might not say that specifically, but basically when you say you've got the best product, you're telling people how great you are. We can say all this, we've got the best service, this is the experience you're going to have. And if you come in to our business or you interact with us and that experience is not the way we've advertised, you've made yourself out to be a liar. So that becomes a massive detractor, because if customers are led to believe something and led to believe they're going to get the best service, or led to believe that a product is going to be a certain way, or led to believe that something will happen when they interact with you and it doesn't happen, you might have lost one client. But as we all know, people talk a lot more about their negative experiences than they talk about their positive experiences.
Absolutely.
Which I am guilty of.
Yes. Oh, everyone is. It's human nature to talk about the negative because it's much more interesting.
So that alignment, that internal marketing part is so important.
And here's another thing. I mean, we talked about our external marketing activities, but think about what organizations are finding most difficult at the moment, and that's attracting new employees.
Oh, yes.
Now, when I'm thinking about working for a particular organization, who are the people, if I can get to them, who are the people who have the most influence on my thinking about that organization? It's the people who already work there. So if you want advocates for your organization, you know, the employer brand, if you want, if you want advocates for your organization, your internal employees are going to be your best and most influential advocates for that organization to external potential employees.
Yeah, because you think about when the employee goes to the barbecue, that's the big thing. And they're talking with all their mates and they ask you about where you work and you say it's not so great, then people aren't going to want to work there. I remember I worked at this one place, and I can probably say who it is because they are no longer in existence, but it's because they were bought and sold a few times. But it was the Trading Post here in Adelaide, like a newspaper. When I originally started there, I think I was 26, 25, something like that. And I remember walking around the hallways and people that I met in the hallways, there was about, I think, 200 call staff, and I was part of a crew of 5 graphic designers. And people were saying to me in the halls, "Oh, you're going to love working here. This is the best place." And I was like, what voodoo is this? And it wasn't just one person. It was a bunch of people who said that to me. And I was like, what is going on here? And I found out why. Yes, they did communicate with everyone very well, but they took care of their staff incredibly well. And it all came down to the owner. He had a vision for his staff to be part of the company. And I won't go into all the bits and pieces he did, but there were incentives, there were loyalty programs, all that kind of stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then the company was taken over by his kids. And very quickly that culture started changing. And then it was sold to Census. And I think I'd left by that point. But I know that the culture deteriorated after that initial owner left, because the appearance was that the staff became less and less important. And what they thought became less and less important, because marketing, when we do it out in the external markets, we want to get feedback. We want to get feedback from our clients, right? We want to get insights from our clients, and then we act on it. So at that particular role, they were getting feedback. They were talking to the client, the staff, and they were acting on it, and the staff felt listened to. And that's a big part of marketing, right? So a big part of internal marketing is maybe doing surveys, maybe seeking feedback. And it can, where it crosses into HR, it might be one-on-ones, collecting that data from all the people within the business, finding patterns and going, well, we need to do something about this because we can see a pattern emerging. So we want to correct the ship. So there's a lot of aspects to it, but it's about actually marketing. I always say to people, the difference between advertising and marketing is advertising is basically about going, hey, look at me. Marketing is about opening up a conversation and understanding each other, understanding if I can solve the problem you've got. So marketing internally is about understanding your staff and acting accordingly.
And what's interesting is that when organizations are small, 2 or 3 people, all this stuff is easy because you're talking to each other every day and you're involved. There's excitement. As the organization grows, you have to change the way you do things. Some things need to get more formalized. Some things need attention on a regular basis, which you were doing just as a matter of course before. And I think internal marketing gets forgotten. And then you look at very large organizations where people say, I don't know what's going on here. And internal marketing has not only been forgotten about, it's neglected. It's sort of derided. And under those circumstances, organizations very quickly fall apart.
And look, this is one of those things that I end up talking about with my clients a whole lot, because one of the things that I'm really passionate about is seeing marketing take its place within organizations. And I think marketing should be sitting at the C-level within an organization. And we've talked about that before. But the point of all that is it's about making sure that you understand the importance, because there are so many, let's be honest, as a business gets bigger, there's so many things that pull at the attention of the directors, the owners, and other people. They've got so many things to think about. So, what do we talk about? What gets dropped when pressure gets on? Like, well, there's cash flow issues. What's the thing that goes out the window? Marketing. And that's because I think marketing isn't seen the way it should be seen within organizations. So back to that point, if marketing is neglected, one thing, it might not be understood that internal marketing is really important. But the second thing is there might be so many vying priorities. So it's a matter of how important is marketing, and understanding that if you're a business builder out there, if you're someone who's looking at growing your business, growing yourself, all of that kind of thing, it's about understanding the importance of it. And that's what I would
And don't
push.
forget the forgotten market internally.
Yeah, well, they have, you take care of that market, makes your life easier.
Absolutely. Well, because you're using the people inside the organization to provide a product or service to people outside the organization. If you're not looking after them, they are the people looking after your customers. If you're not looking after them, they're not going to be looking after your customers.
I think the internal group are the easiest group to market to, because you have the unique ability to talk to them in a way that you don't have with the external market, because they're right there.
Absolutely. But you have to take that opportunity.
Yeah. And the important thing that we talked about earlier is you really need to think about what you're going to communicate, because it comes back to having a strategy. Because you can communicate, and look, everything you do is some form of communication or marketing, but are you marketing the direction you want to go within your organization, or are you just flying by the seat of your pants and, we've got this fire, let's put it out. We've got that fire, let's put it out. And that's more damage control, or just dealing with the noisiest thing at the time. Whereas marketing, internal marketing, is structured and defined, because if you're marketing to an external market, you would have a content calendar. You would have a plan of attack over the next 3, 6, 12 months about what you're going to do. So think about that. Do you have a plan internally for what your communication priorities are for this month, for this quarter, for this financial year, for next financial year? And that's what we're talking about. It's having a structured plan for where you're taking the business and what the staff within your business need to do, understand how they need to behave to help us get there. So it all comes down to having a strategy and a plan for how you're going to communicate. And that's really the nub.
We talked before about branding.
Oh, yes.
Now, branding is all about being able to say, this is how we interact with our customers.
Yes.
This is the persona of our organization. And under those circumstances, how do you get people to understand and align with that brand? That's internal marketing. So if you want a brand culture, you have to build that with your internal market.
And it takes work. Anything good takes work. And to get your staff to be advocates, like at the barbecue, and talk about, where I walked around that business, the Trading Post, and people were just coming up to me in the hallway. And I've never seen anything like it when I started there. Actually having multiple people saying hello to you, you're a new employee, you're going to love working here. I've never seen that anywhere before and ever anywhere since, to be honest. But that would have taken a bunch of work and consistency over time to get their staff to that point. And these were people working in a call center who were on the phones all the time, who were saying that kind of thing to me. And I was working in a different department. So it takes concerned or concerted effort about taking people in a certain direction. But the results are huge. If you have people telling people how good the business is they work for when they're at the barbecue or at the footy with their mates or whatever, it'll make people's ears prick up.
Oh, absolutely, because it's rare.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But things like that, again, it takes effort, it takes planning, it takes consideration. And I guess that's the key to internal marketing. It takes consideration to go, where are we going to go? And
it takes feedback to find out how you're doing. You need to continually assess whether your internal marketing efforts are hitting the spot. Just like you continually assess whether your external marketing efforts are hitting the spot.
Yeah, fantastic. So what tips then will we have for business builders out there to make sure that they're actually starting to prioritize their internal marketing efforts?
Number one, make sure you have a strategy in place. And then when I'm talking about a strategy, it's an internal marketing strategy that aligns with your external marketing strategy,
which eventually aligns with your business strategy.
Absolutely.
So you really have to have that strategic thinking in place, business strategy, and then the marketing strategies that align with that. So that gives you direction, right?
Yes.
All right. So what's number two?
Trial out what you're doing. Pilot. Just do something.
So if you've never done internal marketing before, or it's not been a problem, or not been a priority, not a problem, just start to trial things. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest problem, I think, with internal marketing is that people go, oh, yeah, we'll do that later. It's not that important. It is. It's critical.
So let's just say then, with that tip, what kind of things could we do? Now, I'll start you off. There could be an internal newsletter. If you've got 20 or more staff, that starts to become a thing. Have an internal newsletter that you send out to people regularly, maybe once a month, once a quarter. What other things could you do?
Have regular communication sessions with employees, depending on the size of your organization, where you're letting them know where the organization's going.
Yep. So you might have monthly meetings, weekly meetings, stand-ups.
Depending on the size of the organization, it might be using the regular meeting schedule, but having material that your leaders inside the organization can talk to their people about.
That cascades down. Because I always talk to people about, I think there's 3 key meetings that run a business, and that's your strategy meeting with your directors or your senior people. There might be a sales and marketing meeting, an operations meeting, and then everything from those meetings cascade down. So you might take your front of house staff, and someone from your sales and marketing meeting might pass on that information or have a feedback session.
And, we've talked before about the whole idea of focused communication, focused conversations. Include that as part of your communication to people about where the organization's going and what's happening, what's important.
So what about an employee of the month in certain departments?
Absolutely. So, internal suggestion schemes, harnessing the knowledge that exists within the organization and then using that to provide better services to your customers.
Yep. So there's a raft of things you can do, for everything from incentive schemes through to communications, lunches where you might put on a lunch and have a 5-10 minute discussion, et cetera, or you might get in a guest speaker and start talking about where the business is going and so forth. I spoke to someone just recently who said they had a session with a HR person from a really famous company, and that really got them motivated and inspired. And that was just a lunchtime session where they had baguettes and stuff, and just takes up an hour of time while people are having lunch where they get in a guest speaker. That's internal marketing.
And I think the final point is get feedback.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't rely on what you think is happening. Find out from people what they want to know. Find out from people what they've heard. Verify, if you like, that what you're trying to influence is actually getting traction.
And how would you get feedback? In what ways?
Yeah, you can use surveys. You can talk to people. Don't underestimate the power of just talking to people off the cuff.
Yeah.
You can use the internal review system that you use for performance feedback to your employees. Get feedback from them while you're doing that.
One-on-ones, yeah. So, and what I like about this is, right, so in any kind of marketing scenario, you would have your strategy, your plan, and then you would have some sort of measurement system. This is why we get feedback. Because then once we've got that feedback data in, we then make incremental changes. So back to your second tip, you said trial and test. So really the getting feedback is part of testing that.
Oh, absolutely.
So once you've got those tests, then you can make decisions about, we'll tweak this, we'll change that, we'll move this, because you're not going to get it right overnight. But as soon as you do start communicating, there's nothing worse than being a staff member in an organization where you're guessing what's happening. There's all these closed door meetings and there's not a feedback train where the boss or the CEO is giving feedback, because you then start to, I always talk about being in the clear or in the fog when I go and do seminars for people and so forth and talk about communication. If you're in the fog, which means that people don't understand what's being said and they can only see things in a foggy way, like there's always closed door meetings here, they're left to join the dots themselves. When they join the dots themselves, they are probably 99% of the time joining the dots in an incorrect fashion. And that's where gossip starts.
Yeah, a negative fashion. The old adage, what do you fill a vacuum, a void with? It's negativity.
Yeah.
If in the absence of any information, people have a natural tendency to say, ooh, there must be something wrong.
Yes.
So don't allow that vacuum to exist. Continually fill it up with your communications.
So that you control the conversation. That is internal marketing.
That's right.
Yes.
So on that note,
yes,
we have, I think, illuminated the forgotten market so that people hopefully don't forget the internal market in the future.
Well, I think we've brought it to people's attention, as you say. So I think that's a good thing. And I honestly think if people focus on their internal marketing, it will have a cumulative effect. Whereas when you go out and you, as you said earlier, if you go out and you do your marketing to an external network, it's hard work. Like I think we spoke to Tanya in the last episode and she said, when should you have started branding? Well, 20 years ago, because it takes a while, right? You get the most result from sometimes just starting internally because that spreads the word a whole lot quicker.
Well, don't forget, if you're building a brand, the brand is not just about what people see you as perceptually. It's also what they experience when they come to use your brand.
Yep.
And that is going to be highly influenced by the culture of your organization, by the internal marketing that you do.
Yeah, well, I think that was really great. And now as for next episode, now we had a bit of a problem this week, didn't we?
A technical glitch.
We were going to have a futurist on the show this week, but we actually had, and they're from Sydney, and we had some technical glitches.
So our futurist is coming in the future.
Yes, they'll either be on the next episode or the one after once we get this glitch sorted out. But I'm really looking forward to that because we actually had the conversation and it was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
But there was too many pops and clicks and weird sound anomalies that we're like, well, we have to do this again.
So look forward to that.
Yes, and I think we've also got a gentleman, one of the people in our network, our SA Business Builders Network, coming to talk about the 4-day work week.
So that could be a part of the future.
Well, I think it is a part of the future.
It's a part of the present for some organizations.
Yeah. So these are going to be the next 2 episodes. One's going to be on the 4-day work week and one's going to be our futurist. In what order they come, I don't know.
It all depends on the technical glitches.
That's right. You'll have to tune in and see. Anyway, we hope you have a great fortnight. Thank you for joining us.
It's goodbye from me.
And it is goodbye from me.